We'll call the general session of the October 1st, 2025 Ridgefield Planning Commission meeting to order. If we could please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Siebert, if you could do roll call.
Commissioner Glavin.
Present.
Commissioner Burkhart. Commissioner Flynn.
Present.
Commissioner Butler.
Present.
Chair Tyler.
Present.
Commissioner Wolf.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Borchardt has excused absence. If we could have a motion to excuse him from this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Lust, are there any late changes to the agenda?
There are not any late changes. Thank you.
Thank you. For this meeting, we have one other item to start with. With the loss of Commissioner Ammerman, we'll need to appoint a new vice chair. So asking if there are any nominations for the for the position of Planning Commission Vice Chair. And if you do have a nomination, please state your name and then the name of your nomination.
I move to nominate Commissioner Flynn.
Commissioner Flynn, would you consent to the nomination?
Assuming that you are never absent, I do consent.
History has proven otherwise, but thank you. Are there any other additional nominations for the position of Vice Chair of the Planning Commission?
No.
As there are no other nominations, I believe that the nomination is closed now. May I have a motion and a second to nominate Commissioner Flynn as the new Vice Chair?
I'll put forth the motion to nominate Commissioner Flynn as Vice Chair.
I second.
Thank you. Sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries. Thank you, Vice Chair Flynn. We can now move to the first of our public comment periods of the evening. Anyone requesting to speak to the Commission may request to do so at this time. This is for items not subject to a public hearing tonight. If you have not provided notice in advance to speak during the public comment period, please use the raise hand feature if you're on Zoom, and the clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone so that you're able to make your comments. For controls over the phone, press *9 for raise hand and press *6 to mute and unmute. Is there anyone wishing to make a public comment during this public comment period? Anyone online wishing to do so? Seeing nobody, we will close the first public comment period. Move on to the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the September meeting? And if nobody has any changes to suggest, we could entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes from the September 3rd meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We will now move on to the public hearing portion and business portion of the meeting tonight, and I'll turn the time over to Ms. Lust.
Thank you, Chair Tyler. The first item of business this evening is a public hearing, and it is on a proposed zone change known as the Madge Boschma Ridgefield Mixed Use Overlay Zone Change Request. Next slide, please. So the subject property, subject to the request, is approximately 9¼ acres. It's comprised of 3 tax parcels. It is located northeast of the I-5 junction along North 65th Street. As you can see from the vicinity map, some nearby landmarks are Clark College at Boschma Farms to the southeast, as well as the new Ridgefield School District Elementary School site to the east. And then Clark Cowlitz Fire Rescue Station is just across 65th to the west. The proposal, skipping to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. My clicker is working. The proposal for the site, the zoning is currently Commercial Regional Business, or CRB. The proposal is to add the Ridgefield mixed-use overlay to the site. Practically speaking, the change that would cause would be that whereas under the commercial base zoning, only commercial uses are permitted, under the mixed-use overlay, a mix of commercial and residential uses would be permitted at a roughly 50-50 split. The proposal this evening, and we've gone through this with a couple similar proposals recently, is for the zone change only. There are no development plans proposed at this time. Only if the zone change is ultimately adopted by council would the applicant be able to come back for a formal development application. However, it is illustrative to talk about what kind of development would be allowed under the mixed-use overlay, which is that roughly 50-50 mix of commercial and residential uses. And then the applicant has provided a concept plan, which is shown on the next slide, of what could be built out if this overlay was to be approved. And I have to apologize, in the staff report in your packet, I included the wrong exhibit. It was a different project. The attachment, full page in the packet, is this correct one. So what is on the screen before you is not being proposed through this application, but is a concept of what could be built, and is a concept of potentially what the applicant would subsequently propose under a zoning overlay if that zoning overlay was to be approved.
Sorry, just to interrupt you really quick. Just to make sure I'm visualizing this correct. This is, that concept is within that entire area that would be subject to the mixed-use overlay, just kind of turned sideways, right?
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yes. So as you can see, about half the site is residential and about half is commercial, comprised of conceptually a hotel as well as 2 multi-tenant general commercial buildings. In this concept, the total number of residential units is 142, as you can see, split between several buildings, and the concept also includes a community building, pool, play area, and dog park. All right, I'll leave that up while we discuss the approval criteria that the project will ultimately go through. They are in code. The main substantive approval criterion is that the proposed zone change be consistent with the Ridgefield Urban Area Comprehensive Plan, that being the currently adopted plan for 2016 through 2035, which we're currently planning under. So the applicant provided, and this is illustrated in the staff report in your packet, responses to a number of policies in that comprehensive plan, arguing that they are met and upheld through the proposed zone change. Those include land use, housing, transportation policies in the comprehensive plan. So trust that you've had a chance to review those responses, as that provides the bulk of the applicant's argument for why this zone change would be appropriate for the site. excuse me while I flip through here. Just to note, also in your packet are market and lands need analysis and a transportation impact analysis associated with the site and the proposal that the applicant provided as further argument for the appropriateness of the proposed zone change on the site. So for today, procedure-wise, I will hand it back to you, Chair, for any questions, comment, discussion from the council. Then we will hold the public hearing, and then I would ask Planning Commission to put forth a recommendation to City Council. This proposal will subsequently go to a public hearing at Council, which will be similarly noticed, and then at a separate council date, they will have the opportunity to take action on the item. So with that, Chair Tyler, I will hand it back to you. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any thoughts, comments, or questions they'd like to make? Please.
Ms. Letts, I do have perhaps a higher level question. So there's been recent activity with the city and the county talking about the next plan, and the city's requested to expand the urban growth boundary in some areas. And there's been recent press or material talking about how the city manager expresses that part of that need to expand the boundary was because we wanted to preserve commercial large plots of land in this general area that would be suitable for large commercial development. So how does this application fit within that desire?
Sure. Well, there are, through the council's adopted preferred land use alternative, areas of the city that they are looking to preserve for employment uses, typically those currently zoned for employment. There's also a large area in council's preferred land use alternative that they've identified as a mixed-use center, and that is the area around Clark College that does include this property. So this is in City Council's preferred land use alternative for the 20-year growth management update. This property is in an area that they are currently looking at as an area for a mix of commercial and residential uses.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments?
I just wanted to mention on page 20 of our packet, page 13 of the application. Shoot, what was that one? That I did notice that they included specifically the 7 affordable units at 60 MFI and 80 MFI. And I appreciated that because I know that was one of the questions or concerns that was brought up prior in other proposed development and zone changes. So I recognize and appreciate that that is now included and it's being asked as applications are being submitted.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments?
Just a few, one quick one. Does the dog park count towards the 25% requirement for open space?
Sure. So we haven't drilled into that detail of code compliance yet because the plan is conceptual. So that is something we would have to look at. But my off-the-cuff answer is I believe so.
So it's not, as far as the 25% requirement, dog park is currently not part of what would be considered a natural area, or?
So the open space set aside is intended to be a mix of, it's intended to include usable open space. Right. So that would include amenities like a playground or a dog park, in addition to preserving any critical areas on site in their natural state.
Okay. I think it actually, in part of this, there was a mention about how the commercial need at this point is somewhat limited, which sort of in my brain meant that the potential to have housing here is sort of driving this change, which maybe is kind of obvious to everybody else, but is that your understanding as well?
That would be my understanding based on the effect of the zoning overlay,
Yeah.
to make this not solely a commercial site, but rather allow both commercial and residential uses.
't and the income levels that were mentioned earlier, as well as just the density of housing that could be there, multi-family housing, et cetera. That's very important to me personally. We've talked about it many, many times. That close to the school and that many potential people who could be there, there's traffic concerns, obviously, and there's a traffic study that's included. Maybe we want to, if someone is here to address that, we can hear from them and then talk about it again. But I'm wondering, just like from a city-wide policy or strategy, who all is roped in on those types of discussions as far as, is the school district involved with conversations about how safe places can be, especially during construction? I mean, the way that I'm looking at this conceptual drawing is, if there's housing there and then there's also a bunch of tractors building commercial space, that is potentially very dangerous for a school bus stop, for example, although they're not that far from the school, but riding bikes, whatever, lighting could be dangerous, all the cars could be dangerous, lack of sidewalks could be dangerous. So just, I didn't see that addressed in the traffic study, which is probably not, it's not really the traffic portion of it. It's more of just the safety, but I'm wondering if we could hear something about that, whether it's today or at a future point.
Certainly, it's certainly something we can ask to be addressed in more detail, particularly before this goes before council, as they may have similar questions. To your comment about safety during construction, I do know that KWRL, the school bus provider, is a close partner of ours that we notify and work with as construction projects are happening, particularly when it comes to any road closures or detours. So our development engineering department works closely with them and would continue to do so with this project.
How close is this to the school? I mean, I can see on the map it's close. I didn't walk it out this afternoon, though. Is it like a half a mile?
You know what? That's a great question. I don't have like a quick number for how close it actually is, either as the crow flies or, around the corner.
Yeah. I guess I would say before this goes to council, I think it'd be a good idea to be able to tell the city council that if this is in a bus zone or if those kids are going to need to walk to school. I don't know what the cutoff is, the distance cutoff is for the district, but I guess middle school in high school they would definitely have the bus, but elementary kids, I don't know. So city council needs to know that, I think, as part of their discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Any other comments before we go to the public hearing? Just one quick question for you. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but unlike other kind of planning or development procedures, this isn't a situation where as long as they check all the boxes, it's granted. There's ultimately, even if they check all the boxes and there are other criteria, this is still ultimately a policy decision. Is that fair?
That is correct. This is a legislative review, which means that Planning Commission has the ability to make a recommendation, and ultimately City Council, who are policymakers, not staff, have the final decision. So we do have criteria in the code for a zone change, and we do ask that the applicant demonstrate how those are being met. But you're correct in that unlike most development applications we see that are either a staff or a hearing examiner going through and checking if they meet criteria, we do that, but then we hand it off to Planning Commission and Council for policy recommendation and a policy decision.
Understood. Thank you. Yeah, and I noticed the same thing that Commissioner Flynn pointed out as I was reviewing, that it does seem like, and it's fair, that this land or this area is probably not ideal right now for commercial, but they did acknowledge that that could be the case in the future. I think that just kind of the concern for me is that this is commercial space now. It's bordered to the north by additional commercial zoning. And basically, it's bordered all around by additional commercial zoning. And so we're essentially creating this residential area that will eventually be completely surrounded by other commercial. It might be an interesting planning at that point to incorporate additional commercial into to adjacent properties. Another one of my concerns is the city of Ridgefield is fairly limited on what space we do have for commercial businesses, whether that's now or in the future. And so while it might not be ideal now for commercial, it might be ideal in the future. But if we're losing what we have now, what space we have now for commercial, I think that could pose some concerns in the future. And that's one of the concerns that jumped out to me, but anyway. Okay, I think if there are no other comments at this time, we can move to the hearing portion of this item. Okay. There we go. So now is the time for the public hearing on this particular item of business. If you have signed up with the clerk prior to the meeting to address the Planning Commission, your name will be called and the clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone or come forward to the podium to make your comments. If you have not provided notice in advance to speak during the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature during the public hearing if you wish to make a comment. The clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone so you're able to make your comments. For controls over the phone, press star 9 for raise hand and press star 6 to mute and unmute. Please state your name and limit comments to 3 minutes. There will be no back and forth interaction between the speaker and the Planning Commission. Anybody signed up to provide comment during the public hearing? Okay. Is there anybody who would wish to, if you please come forward to the podium and as stated, please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you.
There we go. Excuse me. My name is Mike Odrin. I'm a land use planner and landscape architect with McKay Sposito. I am representing the applicant tonight and can respond to a couple of the items that I've heard this evening. First was safe travel to schools. I believe it's a state requirement that we provide safe travel to schools, whether it be through some sort of temporary pathway if they're within walking distance, or to notify the school district as to whether or not they're going to be bused to the school itself. Regarding the commercial residential development, the residential component of this in a residential area, as Ms. Lust has indicated, this is an area that has been identified by council as a preferred area for mixed use. The definition of mixed use is a mix of uses, residential being one of those particular uses themselves. This particular project here also would work well with the future, well, the current and the future Clark College that's going to be built to the south. Will provide new transportation improvements along both 65th and the new 6th Street that would run along the south. So there's some important transportation improvements that would also take place as far as this is concerned. I believe I've responded to these as much as I can. I know that the commission has the ability to request additional information as far as our application goes forward, and we can provide that to council. I am here to provide any questions or to answer any questions, although I know that there's not going to be any interaction. Should you have any specific questions that Ms. Lust cannot answer, I would be happy to answer those for you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else wishing to address this particular item of business during this hearing? Please, you may come forward to the podium. Again, state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Monty Blimke, and I just live north of this proposed site on 65th. And we have concerns about more businesses going in around this area, especially since it's been zoned commercial. It just seems, I don't know, how do you say it? If somebody with a deep pockets goes in and wants to change zoning that we've all had to live with in the past. And around my property, it's zoned commercial, and we've had to live with that. But if somebody comes in and can just change it willy-nilly, we have concerns about that. Also, we have concerns about the traffic, the truck traffic that goes through there. Already now, we have a lot of trucks that get off the freeway to skip the scales that run past through there and tear that road up. There seems to be no enforcement on that we can see. And they really come by, and we've talked with the State Patrol about that. They are aware of it. They go up Timmins or 65th to get around those scales. Also, the road that, as you come off of that road, I'm sure that they're only going to go up to maybe 10th as far as this development or anything will have anything to do with it, which is where the fire station property is. And then that road gets destroyed further north as you head that way. We have the Catholic Church there that has parishioners that are crossing it constantly. I'm sure that you're aware of that. But I just don't see why we need to just build these a hotel and these apartments and living complexes, and then throw in a dog park and a playground and say that everything is going to be, hunky-dory. And because there's other people that have lived there their whole life, such as us, that we moved out there so that we could die out there. And now we're going to have all of this going on around us that is not zoned for that. And I just don't think that that's fair to those that have lived out there for a long, long time, that this comes down. And then our taxes go up. My taxes have doubled since the pandemic. So when we called the tax commission about it, the public hearings, they told us, and this is a quote from the one gentleman on the board, is that maybe you just have to swallow the bitter pill and you won't be able to afford to live there. And that was their answer. So thank you for your time. And
Anyone else wanting to make somebody raise? Oh, yes. We have somebody on the Zoom who's wishing to make a comment. If they could, you've been allowed to speak. Go ahead and please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's TC. I'm a current Ridgefield resident. I actually live in the neighborhood directly across the street from the new school site. We've all worked really hard to get the new school site up. I have a child who is elementary school age that's been waiting to be able to walk across the street and go to a brand new school. My concerns really come from the lack of additional development in this area. So I know there's been plans to make an additional road that connects to the back of Clark College to the new school that's still pending, that I think I looked in the original reports was supposed to be built by a developer in 2025. And these roads here, they don't have any sidewalks. They don't have many streetlights. They don't have much development. It's basically a two-way or a two-lane road with no way to walk towards a lot of these developments that currently exist, like in the 7-Eleven area and others. My concerns are just more about focusing on the transportation development, which I know is a big initiative for Ridgefield right now, to make sidewalks, bike lanes, and additional ways of transportation that aren't by car. Currently in the neighborhood that we live in the McCormick Creek neighborhood, we are pretty disconnected from the rest of the city. So on one hand, additional development is good, but it does feel like this is kind of an island, if you will, a development that may eventually, in many years, connect to Clark College and connect to the 7-Eleven area. But as of right now, it would be kind of in its own island. Also, the concern is that, like the previous resident who just spoke, these roads here are not really designed to add with a hotel and 150 unit apartment complex that could be upwards to 300 to 400 people being in this small condensed area. So my kind of comments are just to take into consideration the additional improvements of the city may prioritize first to make sure there's sidewalks, bike lanes and additional, because a lot of the developments that exist right now, they maybe do a frontage of sidewalk in front of the development and then none that connects to any other parts or any other, areas that have sidewalk. So also a hotel being really, really close to an elementary school does have some concerns. A lot of people from out of town maybe don't know there's a school there and don't prioritize learning. Just having hundreds of people going to and from right next to a school at all hours is kind of concerning. That's all my comments for tonight. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else wishing to, please come to the podium. Please state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Steve Marash. I'm an attorney with the Lander Home Firm in Vancouver, and I represent the applicant and just wanted to respond to a couple of the comments that we've heard. It seems like there's some concern in the community about traffic and about how much traffic might be generated by this development, and particularly with respect to the hotel. The hotel is an allowed use under existing zoning, so nothing you do here tonight will affect, whether the applicant can come forward with a hotel. The issue tonight is whether we create a mixed use area on this property, which is consistent with the direction the city council is going for the overall comprehensive plan. Now, a mixed use area, our traffic consultant has looked at that, and it's in the record. You've got a copy, and basically our traffic study shows that there will be overall fewer trips generated by the mixed-use development than if the entire property was developed for commercial uses per the code. So these concerns that we're hearing about traffic actually will be less under the proposed zoning than they would be under the existing zoning. With respect to the need to preserve for future commercial, I think the city council is heading in a slightly different direction for this area since they're encouraging mixed use. We're also in a situation where the city's having trouble meeting its housing goals, so a mixed use in this area would help the city with that part of its comprehensive plan. And then finally, I think if you read our economic study, there's some discussion in there about having residential development being a driver of surrounding commercial development, because now people have a place to live in close proximity of where they could work or where they could shop. In addition, with Clark College coming online, the people that attend Clark College will need a place to live, and to the extent they can live close by, they could walk or ride their bike to college. I think that's all my comments, but I will also be available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else, either in person or on Zoom or the phone, wishing to make a comment during this public hearing period? Not seeing anybody. I don't think I have to gavel out the public hearing, right? So we'll close the public hearing on this item of business. Maybe turn the time back to, or I guess, are there any other comments now or questions for Ms. Lust to follow up on this business item? Please.
Ms. Lutz, we've talked about this following question in conjunction with other applications in the past. In talking about if we have a parcel and they're wanting a zone change, and if there's adjacent parcels, and if we can change those zonings. And I believe the answer in the past was no, that it's driven by the applicants. And so if that's true, then if we talk about concepts that the city has in regards to preferred alternatives, in regards to mixed-use hubs, some of the conversations today have been about creating an island. And if we had an approach where we were looking at it in a larger scale and saying that we intend to develop a particular area, mixed use or other, and proactively look at it in that way to be able to address the larger scope of the issue, are we truly just held to not making changes unless it's driven by an application?
So zoning, including a zoning overlay, is a policy decision. So it's certainly something that Planning Commission can discuss and recommend to council to have further discussion on a broader scale. The subject of this application is only the 3 parcels that the applicant, submitted a request for. But that doesn't mean you cannot talk about the policy and physical context in which they're located, and make that part of your recommendation to council as to what they should be looking at as part of this project.
And a follow-up question would be in regards to, again, the conversation about boundaries is pending discussions between the city and county through this year. If there were no expansions of the urban growth boundary, if it was held as it currently is, then how does that influence available lands in regards to commercial or residential in respect to this application?
So I'm not sure I can make a direct connection to this application. I will say overall, as you mentioned, we're waiting on the outcome of the county's resource land study to determine whether or not some of the expansion requests to the urban growth area that council is looking at in their preferred alternative are appropriate and viable. If the outcome of that is that they're not supportable, then we would be looking at what changes would need to be made inside the existing urban growth area to accommodate more of that future housing and jobs. But that would have an effect on the whole existing urban growth area, not a specific site such as this one.
I know this isn't your department and not really the subject of this application, but maybe just very briefly, could you outline any plans they have currently to further develop 65th?
Yeah, so as you know, council recently adopted a transportation capital facilities plan, which includes a 6-year project list and funding strategies. I do not have that in front of me, so I would like to research that question and get back to you as to what components of any of improvements to 65th are on that CFP. Yeah. And certainly that type of information is, those are important questions for me for the applicant to hear and for me to bring forward and research before this proceeds to council as well. So I appreciate that comment.
Just to follow up on that, Ms. Lust, I guess just in broad strokes, infrastructure like sidewalks, lighting, drainage, all those things get updated as land is developed around it, right? Just a empty, correct. Yeah, okay.
Correct. So when a development project happens, the applicant is responsible for improving the adjacent infrastructure, basically. So updating the adjacent roadway. They're also required to do a full traffic impact analysis, and the purpose of that is to demonstrate what impacts there are beyond the geometry of the site itself, and our city engineering department reviews that, and they come up with a plan to how to fund and build those improvements.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments on this item of business?
Just a comment. So if this application is not approved, as it states in page 12 of the packet, it is still permitted to have a gas station, a daycare, a hotel on those 3 parcels, correct?
Correct. The existing zoning is commercial regional business, and the uses you listed are permitted in that zone.
Any other thoughts or comments on this item of business? Do we have a motion on a recommendation to council on this item?
I motion to recommend the zone change to council for their review.
Any second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of recommending, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
4-1, the motion carries. Still back over to Ms. Lust for the second item of business.
Thank you, Chair. I will remind those present and listening in that this will go to a public hearing before council next Thursday, October 9th, 6:30 p.m., same location or online. The next item of business before you are another round of proposed code amendments. I wish I could tell you this was the last one, but there'll probably be 3 parts. I'm trying to keep the chunks reasonable. So the topics tonight, again, these are code amendments that were on a general proposed topic list that Planning Commission and Council both reviewed earlier this summer, gave staff a thumbs up to move forward drafting amendments on these topics. So this evening we're bringing back to you for discussion and public hearing and recommendation to Council. Part 2 of the code amendments, the topics covered are housekeeping items. These are items that are really fixing clerical errors like incorrect references to different code sections. They do not change any policy direction, housekeeping only. The second topic covered in this batch is housing, residential uses. The third topic is trails. And then there's, I think, one miscellaneous item that we are ready to bring forward with this batch. So with that, I will go into my presentation to get ourselves oriented. Pardon me, I'm looking for a packet page to point everyone to since we're skipping pretty far ahead here. All right, the summary of topics begins on package page 99. So I'll be going through the summary of order, and then subsequently in the packet you have the actual proposed underlined strike-through text amendments. Last time, I apologize, they were a jumble. This time I just did them in numerical order. I will try my best to reference any packet pages as we go through. So the first patch, as I mentioned, are housekeeping amendments, no policy implications. So unless Planning Commission has any comments on any of the housekeeping items, I am just going to go ahead and move forward. Seeing thumbs up. Perfect. So the first substantive section we have are housing amendments. So as I've done before, I'm going to go through these one by one and at each look to Planning Commission if there are any questions or discussion items. So the first item on the list, this is packet page 100, is in the single family use requirements. Currently there is a limitation allowing single-family detached housing in the medium density zone only if it is single story. The proposed amendment would allow 2-story detached single-family residential in the RMD 16 or medium density zone. These are the narrower lots you see in the city. 8 to 16 units per net developable acre. So any questions or comments on that item?
Yep. Are there any of these neighborhoods that are single story right now where there could be homeowners who purchased under the assumption that there would not be a two-story home built right next to them?
There are not. Since council initially adopted the current requirement, there have not been any single-family detached, single-story residences built in the RMD 16 zone.
So there's not going to be a situation where someone has a house and then they purchased it under the assumption there would not be a two-story home built right next to them, and now there will be, and they're going to lose their view of whatever it may be.
That is correct.
Okay. That's it.
All right. Moving on to the next item. This is an item that has come out of a decent amount of discussion over lots being built that are individual lots are pretty steep, and that results in really a less usable yard space because of the grade. So the proposal is for single-family townhouse, duplex, and triplex products in new subdivisions require lots over a certain slope to be terraced to create usable yard space. I'm working with our city engineer and a geotechnical engineer to come up with a number for that. They're the experts on it, but that is the concept being proposed through this amendment.
I just think there needs to be more information there. So I'm assuming that there's not going to be any change made until you get those folks to do whatever homework needs to be done.
That is correct.
Okay.
I didn't want to leave it off the list because I think Planning Commission needs to at least hear and have the opportunity to discuss the topic and the concept. But as for actual text amendments, that is something we're working on.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know what the certain slope is. Is this going to be a requirement for developments or a requirement for home construction?
So that is a really good question on the implementation end, because there's mass grading for the site. And then often when it comes to individual lots, more changes to the slope are made based on the product being built on the lot. So that implementation part is also something I am working on with our city engineer. We might be looking at a concurrent update to the engineering standards that would require additional information about slopes with a grading permit. But I think to what I believe your point is, there is some work to be done like at the building end of things too.
Yeah, it's harder to build walls and make lots flat. If you've got houses on either side already constructed, you're kind of limited on access. So if it's going to be a requirement, it's a lot easier to implement on the front end during development. And then are you guys also basically doing away with daylight basement lots? Like you're not going to allow any daylight basements?
The goal is not to disallow daylight basement lots. The goal would be on those lots that are on a slope and have a daylight basement for the area that is like the backyard to be graded, terraced in a way that it is not just steep. It has usable flat areas.
Okay.
Fully recognizing that there are going to be lots on hills, and often a daylight basement is a good solution and a desirable product.
Okay.
Any other thoughts and comments on this code change? Back to you.
Well, I was just going to say, I welcome it. I think there's a lot of, when I drive around, there are a lot of lots that are just, you walk outside and then it just drops. And I think that is, I mean, as a homeowner, you don't get to use the land that you purchase. So I appreciate the language here, and we'll hang tight until there's that specific marker of what that slope should look like.
All right, the next item on the list also applies to narrower lots that you would typically see in a medium density or perhaps a higher low density zone like RLD 8, so those lots less than 50 feet wide. Currently, there is a requirement to have a front door visible from the street. This proposal would allow those single-family detached homes on narrow, medium-density lots to have a side entry, which would facilitate on these lots a two-car garage and still be able to meet setbacks.
Did we talk about this on the city tour at all?
I don't recall this being a conversation this year's city tour. It might have come up on a previous one when we were talking about like generations of residential design standards. Is that perhaps it?
Yeah, and maybe I just had a side conversation with someone, but okay, so I'm trying to picture this in my mind. So right now, you have to be able to see a front door from the street.
Correct.
But there are some lot shapes that make that incredibly difficult to have that front door along with a two-car garage, or maybe even just a one-car garage.
Correct. The garage is the issue that has been brought to staff on this.
Right. So a garage in the front or a two-car garage in the front, based on the lot size, may limit the ability to even have a front door.
Correct.
Really. So then there's a side door is the only way. The side door becomes the front door or the primary door.
The primary door.
That sounds scary for Halloween. I'm not for or against this at this point, but how frequent is this? Is this a significant problem that homeowners or builders are running into?
It has been brought to us by the building community. There is one project in particular, the Nye subdivision. It is farther north on Raymond Road, on the east side of Raymond, has land use approval for single-family detached residential lots. It is medium density. It's a mix of medium and low density, but the result being they're narrower lots. It was originally approved, in fact, for attached products, so like pairs. The builder reports to us that they're not finding a market for those attached products and are struggling to take this approved, the land entitlement, and build it, basically. So this is, to be transparent, coming from their request to consider changing that regulation so it would facilitate detached two-car garage products on this property and also elsewhere where narrow lots are permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Can you help illustrate perhaps how this, would you have a neighborhood where all you're seeing are garages, or is there any talk about certain percentages allowed within a particular development?
So we haven't considered that, no, a mix of product types being required within a development. That would be a new concept if you wish to introduce that.
Yeah, I think I would be concerned about having a neighborhood where all you're seeing are garages. So I would
Noted.
encourage some use or mix. Yeah.
So I feel like the 50 feet is too high of a threshold to start out at. on like a 25-foot wide attached lot, where you'd have attached on one side, you'd have a 20-foot garage, and then you'd have basically 5 feet to get your walkway to the side door, which would be your front door. So I can see it on, on those size lots, but a 50-foot wide lot, on a 50-foot wide detached, you can have a 40-foot wide house, and your garage is going to be 20 feet wide if you're doing a 2-car garage. You've got 20 feet to work with. Even if you wanted to add another garage bay and have a 3-car garage, then that leaves you 10 feet to work with. So I feel like kind of the 50 foot is a little high. I would see maybe somewhere around 30, 35 feet would be a better kind of threshold to start.
Yeah, absolutely. We can look at what lower, maybe like what's the baseline number that would make sense.
I think you already answered my question in response to Commissioner Flynn's comments, but it does seem like this is probably becoming more of a necessity because of that first item we talked about, where they want to start detaching these houses and therefore losing some of that building frontage that they now need as a more space in between these housing. Is that, or
that is correct.
Even if that change wasn't made, that first change wasn't made, are they still pushing? I guess you can't really do a side door on a attached housing anyway.
So your point is correct. When you switch from detached to attached, you have 2 side yard setbacks rather than 1. So that's taking up more of the total space. To Commissioner Glavin's point, I do need to look at the development that prompted this and see, is it really 50 that's needed, or I believe these lots are narrower than that. So there may be a more appropriate threshold that is more like 30 or 35. I think that's absolutely something we need to look at.
Anything else on this particular code change? Back to you, Ms. Lust.
All right, ADUs. This is a hefty one. So in 2024, the 23 to 24 session, Washington State passed a bill, HB 1337, requiring jurisdictions to update their ADU code to, basically the goal is to make ADUs easier to facilitate and to develop. Good news for us is our existing ADU code was in fairly good shape. A lot of items in the new bill are things we are already taking care of. There were a few key items, though, that in order to be compliant with this piece of legislation, we will need to update. Key among those are impact fees for ADUs may not be greater than 50% of the impact fees that would be imposed on the principal home. At least 2 ADUs must be allowed in all zones that allow for single-family homes, which is all of our residential zones. Maximum ADU floor area cannot be less than 1,000 square feet. Maximum ADU height cannot be less than 24 feet unless the height limitation applying to the principal home is less than that. ADUs must be allowed to encroach in setbacks and/or exceed lot coverage requirements in situations where the ADU is abutting a public alley, which isn't really something we have here, but would still need to be in code. Or where an existing structure is being converted to an ADU and that structure doesn't meet current setbacks. So like an old garage that doesn't meet the current setbacks, as long as you aren't expanding on its footprint, we would be required to allow that ADU to similarly not meet the setbacks. So I have drafted code amendments addressing these requirements, basically doing the minimum possible to meet the requirements set forth by HB 1337. Any discussion?
Doesn't seem any comments or no? Okay, back to you.
All right, we'll move on. Related to that, the next item, we're on to packet page 101 now, is to simplify the ADU review procedure from a type 2 administrative review to a type 1 ministerial review. The effect of this would be, it's still a staff level review. It would eliminate the 21-day public comment period, but as proposed would still maintain required notice to the HOA.
Okay, so hopefully you can just walk me through this real quickly, but my concern here is, while the HOA has to go through their procedure and approval process, the homeowner who wants to make this change may have neighbors or just folks nearby who are not part of the HOA, and they have rights as well. And so if you eliminate the 21-day public comment period, I'm concerned that they wouldn't necessarily be able to make their voices heard in time. So if they are allowed to, by making this change to from the type 2 to the type 1, that's fine. But it seems like eliminating the 21-day period that's a huge red flag for me.
Noted. So the 21-day public comment period does require notice to all property owners within 300 feet. So that is a formal opportunity to comment.
Right. And so if we're going to eliminate that, what is the notice that the neighbors would get?
Nothing except through the HOA.
But if they're not part of the HOA?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm a big no on that. And I'll fight everyone if you don't. No, kidding.
Does that conform with anything in HB 1337?
HB 1337, as far as I read it, is silent on the topic of review procedure.
I would say I agree with Commissioner Flynn.
And on HB 1337, my understanding is that has no impact on HOAs that were already in place at the time the bill was passed, but it does impact HOAs created after the bill came into effect. Is that?
That is a good question. I will need to look into 1337 to see what, if anything, it says about HOAs. If it is not silent on the topic of HOAs, we'll have to incorporate that. Typically, though, the city and HOA review responsibilities are entirely separate. They're not inter-enforcing in any way. But that is a research topic for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess just overall, I would rather eliminate notification to HOA than the neighbors. So I probably agree with Commissioner Flynn on that as well. So just my 2 cents.
All right, anything else on that topic for now? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. The next item on the proposed housing amendments relates to duplexes and triplexes on existing lots. Part of this is kind of a cleanup, I think, of how the code is written. Currently, as written, the code provides that duplexes and triplexes built on existing lots are allowed to be counted as half of a unit for density purposes. Half makes sense for a duplex. We have already seen a couple situations on existing vacant downtown lots where someone is looking at building a triplex, which is a permitted use in the zone, but the math doesn't work out because they can count it as a half of a unit, but it's a triplex, and it would really make more sense to count it as a third of a unit for density purposes, because it's a permitted use on the lot, but then there's this requirement that sort of immediately renders that null, which I do not believe as staff was the intent of that code when it was written in 2021. The second part of this is that currently there's a maximum square footage requirement for units to qualify for that density bonus, be it a half or a third of a unit. That is that the units can average no more than 1,000 square feet. Again, we've kind of talked through the code requirements with a couple of downtown property owners, and that number is a sticking point as well, as far as projects penciling out. So those are the two requirements for duplexes and triplexes on existing lots that we are proposing modifications to.
And I could have looked this up, but you know. So duplexes and triplexes are allowed in all residential zonings within the city. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That was what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. Next item is probably more of a housekeeping item, but felt like it needed slightly more attention, so I put it in this list, is there's a requirement for a 25-foot setback from our main streets, so Pioneer, Hillhurst, and Royal. Currently, as the code is written, it's ambiguous as to where that setback is measured from, whether it is the property line or the right-of-way line. Consistent with the definitions of what a setback is, we're proposing to clarify that that 25-foot setback is measured between the house and the property line.
Yeah, that's something that needs to get cleaned up.
All right. The next item is actually two code sections, but one topic. For final plats, we're proposing to require a signature block for Clark County Public Health. The reason for this is we have, in practice, run into a situation where we approved a plat and then they went to record it and Clark County Public Health said, nope, you're separating a house from an existing well and septic, can't do this. So this gives them an opportunity to catch that earlier in the process when that feedback is more meaningful and actionable. And finally, under housing, a proposal to allow the community development director, me, to approve minor changes to CCNRs when those changes do not have a significant effect on a city facility or city right, in which case council approval would still be required. Currently, city attorney review and then council approval is required for any change to CCNRs. And sometimes there are items that simply do not rise to that level. The city attorney would still review them, but staff would have the ability to approve.
So if there is a, what's the word, insignificant, a minor, changes do not have a significant effect on the city facility or city right, then you'd be able to, or your position would be able to make the change. It get reviewed by the city's attorney, and then it goes into effect?
Correct.
And then is there any, I guess, what would, let's say that you make a decision that someone doesn't like, and the attorney doesn't catch it, and what's the recourse for someone who is somehow damaged in this? Like, how does the city know that you messed up? Not to pick on you, but it's your job.
It is my job.
Yeah.
That is a great question. I think something we'd have to look at for implementation for sure is there any sort of appeal period, noticing requirement?
Or maybe, yeah. I mean, just like what we're doing, some of this really is housekeeping, right? Yeah. You're just changing some of the reference numbers or removing commas or, just cleaning it up the language a little bit. And that seems like it's no big deal, but it still feels like, I don't know, I mean, maybe that's the attorney's job, but it kind of feels like there should be maybe another process of some kind. Not to bog everyone's life down, but I don't know. How minor are these things, I guess, is the big question.
So I wish there was a recent example. It's not coming to the front of my brain.
That's how minor it is.
That is how minor it is. There are already clauses written into most contracts we work with that housekeeping items can just be changed. This was something above that, but it didn't have to do with any, any agreements for like stormwater facilities, parks and trails. That's what council needs to look at if they're being changed, because that has an impact on the public. If it's
Do other cities have a similar, I'm sure someone does, but do they have a similar type provision that we could investigate?
I'll look.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think the kind of the trick we're dealing with is that, as you've often heard me say, we don't enforce CCNRs, but there's a code language that says if any change is made to CCNRs, our city council has to review it, which is contradictory.
Right.
I'm trying to solve that, but we'll see what other cities have.
Yeah. And there's a lot of times these things, nobody cares, right? But nobody cares until someone cares, and then it can become a problem.
Thank you.
So these minor changes to CCNRs, those could have more than minor effects on the HOA, like financially?
Is there like an example you have in
Well,
mind? Sorry.
I mean, if you're able to make minor changes to CCNRs for a community, and that requires additional maintenance for that community, will that burden go on that community?
So like a change from like HOA responsibility to like collect individual property owner responsibility? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay. So I guess to further back up, so the community development director to approve minor changes to CCNRs, those are CCNRs for communities, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if the community already has their financials in a row and they don't have additional funds for something that gets changed, that say that something got overlooked and now they're going to be required to do further maintenance on an additional common space area or storm pond, something like that, then therefore they're going to have to come up with additional funds.
So items like additional maintenance that would affect things like trails or stormwater facilities, those are the kind of thing that has a public impact that, as proposed, would still go to council.
Okay.
As I'm sitting here thinking through this, I'm wondering, and obviously this is something that we'll need to look at before it goes. I'm wondering if there's a way to write this kind of opposite. So instead of saying, this staff member reviews minor changes, it's written to be explicitly that changes impacting XYZ go before city council. And then the other changes would be left to the HOA.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing, there's no additional safeguards from having drastic changes towards the HOA. I understand that they're minor changes, but to an HOA who has limited funds, I guess it could be a drastic change to them. If their pond has to be mowed per the CCNRs once a year, and then you change it to 6 times a year, then that's additional cost to them.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely dealing with different scales of HOA throughout the city.
Yeah, you've got small communities, large communities. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, point taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
If when we're talking about minor, maybe the thought is in regards to what does minor mean. If we started our conversation on this section talking about housekeeping issues. And when you talk about minor, is it something that you could otherwise, or you might otherwise refer to as housekeeping issues, like we briefly noted at the beginning of our session?
Not necessarily limited to that, no.
Okay.
So I'm hearing that this needs some work. I have some ideas based on the conversation here. I will take that. Thank you. All right, those are the housing items. Next section, trails. Packet page 102. Just 2 items in here. They're both to the Planned Unit Development Code. These were brought forth by our Parks Manager, Mr. Crownhart, who reviewed the Development Code for consistency with newly adopted Volume 3 of the Engineering Standards, which pertains to park and trail development. So he combed through our Development Code, Park and Trail Standards, and proposed to correct any inconsistencies. It's really updating language, describing types of trails to make it match, and then an item to strengthen the language around trails and planned unit developments to require providing connectivity, not just within the development, but looking more broadly to nearby amenities to make sure that our review of trails and new residential developments is more systemic. Back to you.
I think back to you.
Alrighty, thank you. We'll get those moving forward. The next section, bit of a mishmash, but critical areas, landscaping, and native plant amendments. The first one is a little bit in the weeds, but it has to do with exceptions from critical areas permitting. There is language in our code creating an exception for areas that have been used as a domestic use from critical areas permitting. So that's something that's mapped as a critical areas buffer, but the applicant or the property owner can show that, no, this was a lawn or a garden. Its function has been changed. There's just some ambiguity in the code around like what is a domestic use, and you know, in practice, resource uses, agriculture, logging, resource extraction, around here particularly agriculture and logging, those are different than domestic uses. They're a different scale, a different purpose, different impacts on the land over time. So the proposal here is to clarify that when we're talking about domestic uses as something that can be excluded from critical areas review, we mean things like yards, gardens, sheds, not farm, forest, resource lands. Okay. The next item is, it's a clarification, but I believe it's an important one, which is why it is on here rather than housekeeping. Oregon white oaks are protected under our existing code. They are listed by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife as a priority species. That's in our code. However, our code doesn't actually say the words Oregon white oak in the critical areas ordinance, so the proposal is to clarify that when we say priority habitat and species, that includes Oregon white oak as defined by WDFW. Any questions?
This is actually great news because you may or may not recall, but I was hoping that the city could officially start calling Oregon white oaks Ridgefield white oaks. And so since there is no mention of Oregon white oak in this part, maybe we could just say Ridgefield white oak would be an option.
I'm sure council would love to hear that.
Something to consider, I think, would be a good idea. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right. Moving on, this item is related to our water team's recent efforts on water conservation and the updated water system plan from earlier this year. So again, there's good language in the existing code, but this would be a reinforcement. So the purpose statement for our landscaping chapter includes promote the use of drought-resistant native species. Purpose statement isn't a development standard, so the proposal is to actually add a development standard to that section, encouraging water conservation in development landscaping.
The purpose statement currently says drought-resistant native species, but then we want to strengthen the ability to implement this purpose statement by adding development standard encouraging water conservation in development landscaping, but not to encourage native species water conservation.
That can certainly be added in. A question I guess I would ask back is what are the, I'm asking this because I believe there will be subsequent questions. What are the properties of native species that we are trying to see the benefit of?
That's a great question. I guess I would say that native species of plants probably have some value to other local native species or wildlife. Not that a plant from somewhere else couldn't produce the same benefit. I'm thinking of, food or something for an animal or insect of some kind, but the native ones were here, and the bunnies and spiders and birds and everything else, they were doing fine. And introducing non-native plants could cause, potentially anyway, could cause some changes in habitat beyond what the humans are doing.
Thank you for expanding on that. I appreciate it. All right, hearing a call to include native in that new language. Okay. The final item in this section is another clarification meant to strengthen our ability to enforce the City of Ridgefield native plant list. That code section 18830 includes a native plant list as well as prohibited and nuisance plant lists. We apply this code section to every development review. Technically, the code language says it applies to all development proposals with a site plan. Subdivisions aren't a site plan, they're a plat, they're a subdivision. So this is a loophole that to date has not been exploited, but the proposal is to close that by clarifying that this code section applies to all new development. All right, just one more item, miscellaneous. We talked a bit last time with the commercial code amendments about expanding the downtown impact fee reduction program to commercial neighborhood business, so that he's going forward in the process. Another strategy we're looking at is to allow payment by installment for commercial transportation impact fees. This is something that is permitted under the RCW, but our current code language does not support it. So this would allow commercial projects that are required to pay those traffic impact fees to do so with a payment plan, basically, rather than a lump sum.
And that's for all commercial or the downtown?
That would be for any commercial projects required to pay TIF, so all commercial, not limited by zoning.
I mean, I feel like it should be limited by zoning possibly. Costco can pay for the TIFs all up front versus if a mom and pop is opening a storefront in the downtown. I feel like should be able to see a little bit of grace and go on payment plan possibly.
Something we can look at. Whether that's zoning or some other threshold, you do see mom and pop businesses, in places like Discovery Ridge and Pioneer Village. So perhaps finding a way to be inclusive of that, but point taken, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that one? Okay. So what we did last time, and I think it worked very well, was we went through the table and noted items where Planning Commission would like to see a change or further research, and then that helped inform a motion. Is that something you would like to do?
I think that seems to make sense.
Okay.
As a procedural question, do we need to have a public hearing on this item?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, this is a public hearing.
We'll do that really quick.
Table my thought, public hearing first. Thank you very much, Chair.
No problem. So at this time, we'll have the public hearing on this particular item of business. If you have signed up with the clerk prior to the meeting to address the Planning Commission, your name will be called and the clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone or come forward to the podium to make your comments. If you have not provided notice in advance to speak during the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature if you wish to make a comment. The clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone so you're able to do so. Make your comments. For the controls over the phone, press *9 for raise hand and press *6 to mute and unmute. Please state your name and limit comments to 3 minutes. There will be no back and forth interaction between the speaker and the Planning Commission. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment during the public hearing on this particular item of business? Not seeing anybody, we will close the public hearing on this item. I turn it back over to Ms. Lust. I think, as you stated, we go line by line through them and make our comments on each one. I think that would be a good way to do that.
All right. Housekeeping items, no comments. Got it. Limitation around two-story single-family detached in RMD 16. I did not hear comments on that. Requiring lots over a certain slope in new subdivisions to be terraced to create usable yard space. Heard a few things on that one. Obviously, we are waiting for feedback from our engineering team on numbers for that we can actually propose in the code. And I also heard comments around making sure we're not disallowing daylight basements. Anything else on that one? Okay. Provision requiring homes on lots less than 50 feet wide to have a front door visible from the street. I heard two things. One from Commissioner Wolf regarding requiring a mix within neighborhoods. And one from Commissioner Glavin commenting that perhaps that 50-foot threshold is too high to identify a lower feasible threshold. I heard perhaps looking at 30 to 35 feet. Okay. HB 1337 ADUs. Did not hear anything on the HB 1337 items. Did hear comments on the next item, which is the review procedure. Namely, don't change it from type 2 to type 1. If there is a change, would be eliminating HOA notification rather than neighbor notification. Any follow-up on that?
I may have been a little bit facetious with the HOA elimination, but
Understood.
yeah, thank you.
So hearing on that one, don't change from type 2 to type 1. Okay? Duplexes and triplexes on existing lots, changing the numbers required for density bonus on those, did not hear any comments. Requiring the 25-foot setback from major streets to be measured between the house and the property line as a clarification, did not hear any changes. Requiring signature blocks for Clark County Public Health, did not hear any comments. Allow Community Development Director to approve minor changes to CCNRs. This needs more research, examples, look at what other cities have, create safeguards, needs work. Any other comments on that one? Okay. Did not hear anything on either of the two trails amendments. Did not hear anything on the critical areas domestic use exemptions amendment. Did not, well, I heard something on the Oregon White Oak amendment, but I don't know if that's consensus among the Planning Commission.
Just if there's no definition or listing of the word or phrase Oregon White Oak, feels like we don't need to add that if we don't want to.
Okay. So
Just one commissioner's opinion. It's not a big deal.
I guess my perspective is to be consistent with what an arborist would call a tree.
I don't know about arborists and how they operate, but I'm happy to start a letter writing campaign with the state, and we can get it changed at the state level if that's necessary. So I think maybe don't make a change, and I'll do my part separately.
fantastic.
Okay.
All right. Next item, promote use of drought-resistant native species. Translated that into a code requirement. What I hear is add the word native species, words native species explicitly in that code requirement. Okay. Native plant list applicability, did not hear any comment on that. Finally, impact fees, allowing payment by installment for commercial transportation impact fees. I heard look into limiting that by zoning or some other means to limit it to smaller mom and pop businesses. Okay. That is what I have on the list. Turn it back to you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or items the commissioners wish to address about any of the code changes? And if not, do we have a motion?
I'd make a motion to recommend to City Council adoption of these changes with the notations that you've provided that capture our discussion.
I second.
We have a motion. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That will conclude our business section of the meeting. We will now turn to our second public comment period. Anyone requesting to speak to the commission may request to do so at this time. If you have not provided notice in advance to speak during the public comment period, please use the raise hand feature if you're on Zoom. The clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone so you're able to make your comments. For controls over the phone, press *9 for raise hand and press *6 to mute and unmute. Is there anyone wishing to make a public comment at this time? Anyone on Zoom? Not seeing anybody, we'll close this public comment period. Turn the time back over to Ms. Lust for staff reports.
Thank you, Chair. The one item I have tonight is, well, first of all, congratulations, Vice Chair Flynn. Yeah, And second of all, we will be opening recruitment to fill former Commissioner Amerman's seat on Friday, October 3rd. The recruitment will be open from the 3rd through the 24th, after which we'll review applications. Ultimately, it is the mayor's decision on who to appoint to the position. So I'd expect an appointment maybe at our December meeting. Yeah, so I believe that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn time to reports from the commissioners. I think we started that in this last time. Started Commissioner Wolf.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Flynn.
Couple quick things. One, thanks to the members of the public for coming and participating. Number two, the city council created the youth commission. I might have the name incorrect, but that is pretty much the coolest idea I've ever heard in my life. I'm very excited to hear everything about it once the commission is seated and they get to work on things. It's going to be great, I hope. Went to the homecoming football game on Friday, and I don't know what has happened, but somehow the parking and the driving and the safety was so much better this year. It was a total disaster either last year or the year before, and it was like safe. No one was almost getting hit by cars. It was incredible. So hat tip to the security in the school district for doing that the right way. And then I'll put my grumpy old hat on even more, and I'll say that the new flashing radar signs, the speed signs that we have on Pioneer and on Hillhurst are awesome. Hillhurst, between right here and the dog park, there are way too many people who think that their time and life is more valuable than everyone else's, and there are people driving 45 miles an hour up that road, and there's a blind corner, there's a crosswalk, there's people crossing the street all the time. There's 3 or 4 school bus stops. There's deer everywhere. There's coyotes everywhere, and it is nuts. And I hope that those flashing lights shame those people into at least coming down to within 10 or 15 miles of the speed limit. It's ridiculous. So whoever did that with the city, give them a high five for me. That is terrific. Everyone who was involved, I'm so thankful. So thank you. And last, thanks to the city staff.
I will pass along that kudos. The speed study, fun fact, the top speed they recorded was 120 miles per hour.
On that one? At that sign?
On Hillhurst?
That was on Royal.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Doesn't matter. That's really bad. I guess I do have a question though. I can see when people are speeding right now, but does it record like the speeds that people are recorded at, so the police department or the city knows, hey, we didn't give anyone a ticket because no one was there at 3 a.m, but there were 2 cars going 120 miles an hour or whatever. Is that at least known? Do we know if it's going to be people driving slower now or faster or nothing, no change?
So I am not sure what the data collection capabilities of those speed signs are. Interesting question, though. I can ask them. I'll ask our police department.
I'm walking there 4 or 5 times a day, so I can just make notes and turn those in to the city if you want.
Yeah.
No.
Or see how fast you can run.
Not very fast.
Thank you, Commissioner Flynn. Commissioner Glevin.
I don't have anything at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Butler.
I just wanted to say thanks to the great partners in Ridgefield that supported the Ridgefield Multicultural Festival. That was the first Saturday in September. Of course, City of Ridgefield, Ridgefield Lions Club, the Port of Ridgefield, Ridgefield Main Street, and Red Truck Farms. It was a great event. I ran the Loteria station, and so it was just nice to see community members come through and participate and be engaged. I also attended the comp plan workshop last month. It was a good turnout. I feel like there was a lot of people asking questions and speaking to city staff and other staff members that were here, and they were ready to answer questions. A reminder that Green Bag is next Saturday, October 11th. And thanks and kudos to Mayor Cole, City of Ridgefield, for declaring October Disability Employment Awareness Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple items for myself. Maybe I was going to ask if maybe you could pass on. I wrote his name down, but I can't read my own handwriting. The first individual who commented during the first public hearing period. Maybe it'd be good to pass on that note about how they see people using 65th to try to bypass the way station. I'm sure the police already know about that, but maybe you can flag it for them and they can coordinate with Washington State Patrol. And
Absolutely, I have that in my notes to tell our police department.
excellent, thank you. I will also put on my old man hat and say I really appreciate those speed cameras as well. I particularly appreciate, so we live right off of Sevier. We've talked about Sevier a lot, or Sevier, however you want to pronounce it. And we've had our kids' bus stop is right there. And so we've also had some speed problems along that road. It is a 25-mile-per-hour road. And so we provided some comments to the police, and within hours they had the little portable speed one out there. So you're welcome if you've seen that. And I have tested it out. I hit 16 miles per hour in slip-on shoes and jeans, so if anyone can beat that. But we really appreciate the very quick response from the police department that responding to our thoughts and concerns, and so if you want to pass that along to them as well. I believe that's all I have as well. So again, as always, thank you to you and Ms. Siebert for being here and all you do to prepare for this. And if there's nothing else, we will adjourn.